of, you know, where do I want to be? Do I want to
Right.
be in the architectural world like I have been pursuing in the developer world? Because it'd be much easier to talk about that, if it's all encompassing. If I'm spending the same amount of energy in this one area. If I have to move this one cup and it starts to touch a bunch of different categories, much more easier than having to move this cup and then that cup and then that cup, you know?
Hmm. So welcome back to this next episode. We have Jerry Batista here in the studio.
Let's go.
And we are on the move currently. We are in a new spot every episode until we really find what we like, and we're trying out some different lighting techniques. But welcome back to Moving the Mountain, a creative leadership podcast. And we have my man here today who's an entrepreneur, also a creative, and he is in the space of architecture, along with some other things.
Dabble a little bit.
Yeah, but more recently, Jerry has left the space of a full-time job, and he's taking on the exciting and frightening
The leap of
career,
faith.
the leap of faith to be an entrepreneur, start his own business. So he's very new in it.
Yeah.
And you were in I remember having the conversation with you because you were going to start over at Buckland Plaza, which is a development that you and your family have kind of undertaken.
Yeah, yeah.
And you were like really into that. And I was excited for you. It was one of those things like, oh, that's awesome,
Yeah.
and we've had development conversations. And then you get offered this really cushy position
Yeah.
at this, it wasn't a design firm, but designing for.
Yeah, there's a pretty interesting story about that, and I can go into it a little bit if you want.
Sure, yeah.
So back in 2018, I was working at my full-time design firm, which is, we specialize in designing dentist offices, like nationwide. Pretty awesome gig, but I was pretty tapped and wanted to do something else. And I had this drive to go full-time in developing this building that we started working on in Providence. And at the time, I decided to quit my job and go full force and do this. And it wasn't until we learned a lot of things in that project, through that project with my dad and my brother, that it started to realize that this is probably going to take a little longer than I thought, and probably a lot more energy and a lot more drive to kind of get this going. And at the same time, I was offered a conversation, I should say, back with the same firm that I left. But this time, they wanted me to run the entire department. So they wanted me to come back as a director. And, it was kind of weird. I wasn't really planning to come back because I wanted to go full force entrepreneur. But I found myself in a weird position that, like, maybe cold feet, maybe cold feet, we'll call it. But turns out when I decided to take that position back in my old firm, I started learning a whole new set of traits and skill set that I'm using now when I'm working for myself again.
Yeah, I remember you kind of you got asked to come back, and it was like very kind of, and I was a little like I was excited for you, but I was a little disappointed.
I know. I remember that time for
I was
sure.
like, "Ah."
I was disappointed in myself for like accepting it, honestly, but also like I was trying to figure out what the time was saying to me at that. I was very like, I was very kind of in touch with like my spirits in that sense, and figuring out, okay, timing wise, what made sense for me. And at the time, I thought, going full force developer made sense. But that started to hit a bunch of different walls and started to venture into areas that I couldn't control, or maybe I didn't have the right education at that time frame. And so I was kind of like, you know what, let me put that at the table. Let me see, like, what do I know, what do I don't know, what do I have the drive to do. And if you remember, I had another baby on the way.
Right, which that was like that's something that I've never when I've gone full fledged into starting a business or just being a freelancer at times.
Yeah.
Like I've never had that responsibility of like, okay, I'm married, I'm taking care of this person, or even more so, I'm taking care of this person, and then this other person who 100% without a doubt cannot take care of themselves.
True. Factual.
Yeah. So a little bit different. So I don't want to push. I didn't want to push too hard.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But you have all like you have the passion. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
of an entrepreneur. Like
Mm.
we serve together in church.
Yeah.
The way you do ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody's the same. I feel like, which
True.
I'm starting to like recognize. Where
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
some
yeah.
people are just like they're um, they're there because they want, not only
Mm.
because they want to be, but like they're enjoying it.
Yeah, I gotcha. I
You know.
gotcha. No, I gotcha.
And I feel like when you're enjoying what you do, like that's what you really gotta,
Mm.
where I feel like you enjoy what you do,
Yeah, I do. I do. And
or you do things you enjoy. I'm not sure.
yeah, no, I definitely do. And I would say that I resonate with you in a lot of ways that we're kind of a visionary in that sense. We kind of think far into the future on projects, and, maybe not the immediate benefit. It's kind of more of a 10-year, 15-year plan. And for that, mixed with a lot of other traits that we probably both possess, which is kind of like the creative elements and our skill set with many different fields. That combination just kind of evolves into like somebody who's constantly thinking about how to grow something, how to scale something. So yeah, I think we definitely both have those traits. I've always had those traits. So I think it was just a matter of time that I'd probably find myself into an entrepreneur position. But I did have to factor out those elements, like, okay, well, I have a wife, I already have a son, and I have my
Right.
second son coming up. So I had to make some decisions that, like, I was, just kind of had to factor those in. I wanted to play it safe enough where I can make these decisions and not like regret.
Right.
But you know, in time, I knew it would help out. And honestly, looking back at it, I'm glad. I'm glad I did because I learned in that director role that I was in for 2 years. Um,
Jeez, 2 years. I didn't
it
think it was
moved,
that
dude.
long.
No, it moved quick, dude.
That's crazy.
Moved so fast, so
I thought that
fast.
was like 6 to 8 months.
Oh, dude, it moved so fast. But I learned how to communicate with a team of people. I had about 6, 7 employees, um, and everybody besides two, I would say, was older than me. So I learned how to have to communicate with people that were in different positions, with more experience than I had in certain roles, and not only that, it extended out between different departments. Because I was doing things that was touching many departments in the company, which was actually one of the reasons actually I probably uh, had to leave at that point.
Yeah,
But
tell me a little bit about that
yeah,
because what it seemed like from the conversations that we had, so you're in this director role, things are going well. You
yeah,
guys are exploring like project management softwares, things like that. We,
hmm
kind of, I think I've
yeah,
hit you in like different parts of the
yeah.
journey there.
That's right.
Um, but you start butting heads a little bit.
Yeah, so it's funny. What I found, I worked really close with the CEO, really good guy, very visionary. And since I was directing this one department that I would say was probably like the heart of the design firm, besides design, we also produced equipment and we also trained people how to use it. But design was the root of that company. And so since I ran that department, we kind of had a lot of play into a lot of other departments and how they kind of work things. And so as soon as I started going in, I'm like realized like things like email and schedules weren't like, we were still using Google scheduling, and everybody had a shared calendar. Dude, we had like 50 employees sharing a calendar.
Wow.
I'm like, man, hold on, we got to move to Outlook. We have to move to this. And so I started coordinating the whole company to move into just a more efficient way.
Yeah. Now, why were you the authority on that? Like, did you have experience in that?
I had some experience working at Citizens Bank. It's funny. In during my college years, I worked security at Citizens Bank, and I ended up, just networking my way up into higher positions. But I learned a lot, and that's could be for another podcast. But I learned a lot in my time there that really taught me professional, just etiquette, some of the software that people use in a corporate setting, and kind of really what moved a big company like that. So with my, I would say, natural tendencies of being vocal about some things that I really believe in, it was just a matter of time until I started like speaking up at these executive leader meetings that we had at the firm, and so I think I would say at the end, my boss, probably felt, and he did let me know that, but I stepped on his toes a lot in that, and he didn't feel comfortable with that, and I respected that. We both mutually agreed that it may have made sense for me to just part ways and start doing my own thing that I can kind of control 100%. And I respected that. I respected him for that, and I think he respects me for that as well. Um, but it really, you know how it is when you have these traits of a leader.
Right.
I think it starts to sneak up in any scenario that you're in.
Well, I think um, you see flaws in the system, right? And you see how it could be better,
Yeah.
and you have ideas in how to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel like for people like us, it's just like, what's the best? Like, I know where we're trying to go. How do we get there?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, let's implement X, Y, Z. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what are we waiting for? And that can be frustrating for someone
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
to just not say
Sit on
anything.
the sidelines. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's tough. That's tough. I mean, somebody like us, we don't want to waste time.
Right.
You know, we want to get things done. We want to execute it. We want to see growth. We want to see rewards, like little mini wins
Mm-hmm.
out of that. You know, so
We mentioned like Outlook and these things, and I feel like software is one of those things that creates structure and organization that can lead to scale,
oh yeah,
right?
oh totally, totally.
And but that in itself, like the research and I mean, I have a little bit of experience with that stuff, but everything that we've implemented here is just like takes forever
It
to
does.
like implement
To
something, then
understand, yeah.
get everybody else on board with it.
Well, it's also even finding the right program.
Right. And there's so many options out there now, and they
Millions.
all don't do everything.
Oh no, it's finding the perfect one.
Right.
It takes a while. You know, you have to trial it for a couple of weeks. You have to learn it in and out. You know, and then ultimately, after a couple of weeks that you dedicated to that, you realize, oh man, this one con,
Right.
is going to prevent me from growing.
Right.
So it took. I remember going through a lot of trial and error for figuring out the software that we used to basically design. We designed over 200 offices a year, just with a small team. You know, just comparatively.
What did you end up settling on? Was it Monday?
We did Monday. Yeah, we did Monday.com for a while. Even Monday.com had a lot of flaws that we were peaking at.
Yeah.
The servers were just getting bogged by the amount of programs or the amount of projects that we were like feeding it. Because you do 200 projects, but really you have a lot more that are just kind of starting or ending. There's just kind of a fluctuating set of projects that you go on. So many processes between the projects.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't think about that.
Did you explore Choir? I know I had pitched that.
I think you did. And right off the back, I don't know if it had. I could be wrong on this, but I don't know if it had a time tracking setup.
No, it didn't.
Yeah. So as soon as it's funny, once you go through, it's kind of like house hunting, right? Like as soon as you see something that's just like it doesn't have a driveway, well, check off. Like
Yeah.
keep moving.
What I've been noticing now is like, okay, it has 90% of what we need. It doesn't have time tracking.
Yeah.
Okay, we need a time tracker, so we're gonna go to like Timely, because we used Choir for a while, and we like you said, like we researched Asana, all the big names.
Jira, all these guys. Yeah.
And price obviously factors into it. Choir was a free beta startup. I think it still is.
I tell you, Dill, price. I mean, like, sorry to cut you off. Like, if it did 100% of what you needed, honestly, price starts to make sense. Like, it starts to like really be low priority at that point.
Yeah, I think when we were exploring, I mean, I think we could have afforded it, but it was just like anywhere we could, save
fit
some
in.
money.
Yeah, oh, totally.
Because even like the cost of implementing,
True.
it's huge.
Yeah, it adds up. I mean, if you're factoring the employees that you're going to need to dedicate towards that, I think it's a huge time sink. It really is. I mean, it's all worthwhile, assuming that you find a program that you could jump onto right away.
Right.
But it is a time sink. We had, luckily, I had an administrative assistant that really helped me out. And so she was tasked primarily, besides of keeping us on schedule and just keeping everything kind of like tight and organized, her project was to figure out, and interview these different programs or these different companies that would provide us with a program that suited our needs.
Yeah. And like you guys were obviously a bigger company, right? So you can afford an assistant, just to kind of like, get this thing implemented and that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Like for a startup, it's like I feel like startups are always in that vulnerable place where it's just like
Going through it right now.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
going
just
through
like
it now.
do you have the bandwidth? It's like, man, I should be looking for clients, not spending 2 weeks exploring project management software and then implementing it and then finding out it's the wrong one.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
That's a good point. That's a good
It's
point. I'm in that boat now.
yeah.
I'm in that boat now.
It's tricky.
It's funny. So so fast forward to now, right?
Mhm.
I have my own business, which is exciting, full time
Which
into it.
is, sorry, we should
Yeah, we should probably talk about that a little bit, right?
not plug Monday.
You're right. You're right. So I have a company called Jericho.
Mhm.
Stands for Jerry and Company, but it's an architectural visualization company that does renderings and animations, does a lot of residential renovations, and I kind of help people conceptualize through their project, whatever it may be.
Mhm.
So they may want they may think they want a new kitchen or a new living room, or they feel like the floor plan is messed up, or it could be a business. A restaurant may want something here, but they're just tossing out the idea. What I'll do is I'll kind of show them all the options, pros and cons. We'll go through it. What are the cost benefits? What are the value elements? Does it actually provide you a good service for your customers, or would it actually make you happy, you and your family happy, if you had this, you know, game room?
Yeah.
Um,
Which I feel like that's so valuable.
yeah.
Like to be able to see something, especially if someone like me, I'm super visual,
hmm
like, it doesn't exist unless I can see it. Like I
Yeah.
need to be able to see it. And
Yeah.
in my head, there's so many options. And I just, I never
Exactly.
take the first step because I can't see it.
Oh yeah. I
You
mean,
know?
you're cycling through so many options and so many possibilities. It's good to start to plug them down on paper and start to
Mhm.
see the options when they're all impacting each other.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so what really, this service actually hits home a lot with couples. A lot of husbands and wives don't agree on a lot of renovations that they may do.
Hmm.
So what I'll do is I'll show them both options. I'll show the husband's thoughts, the wife's thoughts, and then we'll go through the pros and cons together. And then what they end up doing is, on their own, they start to see, okay, you know what?
Hmm.
The benefits are this, but I agree, now that we see it on paper, if we went with this route, we'd have a better thing that, would solve this issue.
Right.
So it's really helpful to visualize. I'm a huge, which is hence the company, but I like to visualize things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I first met you, I think you were like 25. I guess it's been like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like it's been longer than 3 years.
I've been with the church for about I would say 3-4 years.
3-4 years.
So yeah, I was 24, 25 when we met.
Yeah. I thought you were like at least 28, 30.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely older than me.
Yeah.
Which turns
Wow.
out I'm older than
Oh,
you.
dude, yeah, you're the cougar, man. Can I call a guy a cougar? I don't know. Maybe not. I'm married.
We'll cut this out. Cut this out. Yeah. So I was originally hitting you up because you had done some video. And I
Yeah.
was just starting out with the company, and it's just like another video guy.
Yeah.
But I think you were kind of involved with you doing cars.
I did
and that kind
YouTube,
of thing.
man. Yeah,
YouTube.
that's true. That's right.
Yeah.
You were checking me out for some help on,
Yeah,
on,
and
your,
you,
on your gigs.
you know, like use the Ronin, I think.
Yeah,
and I like-
so I had some
I was
experience.
intimidated by it.
I have a past life. I have a past life. I like to call it. It's funny. I did YouTube for a while, and I want to get back into it. It's funny that you asked, but for a while I used to film cars,
Mhm.
and I did that I think I started back in 2010 or so, like right when I graduated high school. Yeah, I used to film cars, and just all around, start to meet people, and I'm like super into cars.
Yeah,
So I
and you were
started
doing
getting-
pretty well on YouTube,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, I started to get traction. I would
Yeah.
say.
What were you up to, like 8K subs or something
I'm
like that?
just below that. I'm at 7 and change, 7,000 subscribers. And it's funny. I had some friends that had that much before they took off. And now they have like 100,000,
Really?
millions,
Wow.
million subscribers. Really taken off. But it's really like it's where I'm at now, which is I think is funny, because you really need that compound effect to happen. Where you really start to spiral. But what I found with YouTube is that, you could be not the greatest YouTuber, but as long as you're consistent, you're gonna get views. You have to favor the algorithm, the way that works. So I found that I could not have been consistent if I didn't figure out what was going on in my life. I was just so spread out. Like, oh, I wanted to do architecture, I wanted to do this, I wanted to do that. So I just I had to like start to shave things out of the basket, so that I can focus in on some things, and then start to set up the automation processes and scale it up properly. So, YouTube will be a thing, hopefully in the future. Yeah, so I have a past life there. I have a good experience there, which is nice, which is fun. I met a lot of people there. Still have a lot of close friends that we still, we're on group chats right now.
Just through YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube, man. YouTube, man. I call them pen pals. I have a bunch of pen pal
Interesting. I like
buddies
that.
that we still keep in contact with, other YouTuber guys that still do their thing, and then even fans. There's been times. Well, in that era, I'd get recognized. Especially because like I was driving the car that I'd film all the time, and it was pretty flashy. It was a pretty flashy car.
Really?
Man.
What was it?
Not that the not that the brand was amazing, but the paint job was very flashy.
Yeah.
So it was a Volkswagen Jetta. So it was a diesel Jetta. But what I did is I painted it with this thing called Plastidip, and basically it's a paint that you could peel off once it hardens. So as soon as I figured that out, I'm like, wait a minute. So as soon as I apply this paint on this car, I could just peel it off when I'm done with it. And so I fell in love with that thought process. I was like, you know what? Let me go crazy. And so I painted it camouflage red. So it was like a red camo color. I got to show you a picture of it. But yeah, it caused a lot of attention. Volkswagen ended up taking pictures of it and posting it.
Really?
Yeah, dude, it was pretty big. And so because of that, I think I started attracting a lot of car guys for that reason. But then I got to a point, again, just coming back to, man, I'm an architectural designer, I'm an entrepreneur. I started realizing, like, man, I don't want to end up being a mechanic, because a lot of people are asking me for car advice now, like what to do with this engine. I'm like, well, I really just like the way it looks.
Right.
I'm a car guy, but I'm not a mechanic. So I'm like, yeah, let me retreat a little bit, figure out my stance, and focus on the branding aspect of it. Again, learning lesson.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
It's an interesting reason to like back up. I feel like there's more there.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. I mean, it's that amongst other things. But
Yeah.
you got to remember, I know you know the deal, right? You're running a wedding photography and videography business. There are moments where you're going to film, and then there's moments where you got to edit, right? For YouTubers, that's a weekly activity. And for daily YouTubers, which I was trying to become at the time, it's a daily occurrence, nightly, So you get up, film all day, trying to figure out what your thesis is, what your mission is to film. And then at the end of the day, you're going to end up spending a couple hours to edit and then try to post it and get that scheduled, get your thumbnail right, and then post it for the next day.
It's a lot of thought. Yeah.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of
Yeah.
work. And so for me, being a perfectionist or trying to be, right, I think we all can kind of relate as a creative. You want to make sure that your product is good or something that you make is good. So I would get stuck on the song every single time. Stuck. I'm like, man, I want to have a good song because you're getting all the, all your characteristics there, right? You're getting the video element, and you want to hear something that matches the video, right? You don't want to, I disliked watching other videos that just didn't make sense, And I was in the montage category, where I'd have like a summary of like car shows and things like that, where I'd film a bunch of stuff, compile it into one, and just create a story around it.
Right.
So the song is important, So there'd be countless times where I'd spend way too long finding a song, and then cut into my sleep, cut into my like relationship, right? Like cut into other things, my architecture studies, my just friendship, relationships, So it became a burden quickly.
Huh.
The more I pursued it, so I'm like, you know what? Let me take a step back and look at it from the perspective of, where do I want to be? Do I want to
Right.
be in the architectural world like I have been pursuing, in the developer world? Because it'd be much easier to talk about that, if it's all encompassing. If I'm spending the same amount of energy in this one area. If I have to move this one cup and it starts to touch a bunch of different categories, it's much more easier than having to move this cup and then that cup and then that cup,
It's a confusing analogy right there.
It's momentum, I'm trying to get the momentum going. That way, like, it all moves easier.
Yeah.
Less stress.
Let's revisit the architectural thing, and I want to come back to the cars because you're a car guy. I
Yeah.
actually test drove a Tesla yesterday. I know you're an Elon Musk fan.
Elon Musk, baby. MCM.
You're a fellow stockholder.
That's right. That's right, baby.
Let's revisit that, but
All right,
let's go
yeah.
back to the architectural design, and that's essentially. So we met. You were the Ronin guy.
Yeah.
I was very intimidated. This guy, I got to get him on the team.
This is news to me. I don't know you were intimidated by that. I thought you were also the Ronin guy.
I was intimidated by the Ronin.
Oh,
like
okay,
I was
okay.
just like, man, like
Yeah.
I don't know how to balance it.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a whole thing.
Gotcha.
It's intimidating. Like we had a lot of weddings and like we really
Yeah.
didn't have a lot of knowledge.
Yeah, true.
So I always felt like I was a step behind,
Mm.
and
You didn't seem it.
yeah,
Confidence, baby.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
yeah, we made it work,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
it was always just like I could never just be like a video guy.
Gotcha.
You know, like I'm
Gotcha.
gonna be really good at that. I'm gonna just focus on
Yeah,
like
yeah.
learning this equipment. Like I had some friends who were just like gearheads, and they were just like they would research everything.
Yeah.
But I had to research like business stuff,
Yeah, that's true.
leadership stuff,
Your time was split.
team stuff, sales stuff, marketing
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah, that makes
project
sense.
management. Like it was like
That's a lot.
I couldn't be just like, oh, I'm gonna be a gear guy.
I could relate.
Yeah.
I could relate.
Um, and you know, a little envious of that. Like I wish
Yeah.
I could, because I want to be very good. Like if I'm doing something, I want to be very good and like
Yeah.
feel confident in it.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, man. I know exactly what
Yeah,
you're saying.
so I'd always just like,
Yeah.
you know, with Josh who set up, you know, the setup here, it was just
Yeah.
like, hey, could you figure out how to set this thing up?
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
if I could try to delegate stuff so
Yeah.
other people could learn it,
Yeah.
and then they would know it, and then break it down to me.
I think that's the right approach.
Yeah.
You know, knowing that now, because like I said, I think you probably also went through these, you know, learning, I guess, seasons of your life, just like I have, where you know you try to dive deep into one thing and realize like, man, I would need to go even further to become this expert, but I need to spend more time learning these other areas if I want to get this thing accomplished.
Right.
You know, so
Right.
I can relate.
Yeah, it was just like being the best, or like even understanding this is not going to take me where I know I really want to be.
Mm,
So it's just like,
yeah.
but someone has to know how to use it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Someone's gonna run it.
I know. I know.
So even having someone or like
Yeah.
having someone learn it,
Yeah.
which is the way we went. But
Yeah.
that was probably like the first couple like interactions we had. You were the video guy,
Yeah.
and I knew your brother, and then I later found out that you were an architect,
Mm-hmm.
and I had this idea, which we won't get too far into it because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a you know.
I just want to say I'm an architectural designer because I don't hold the
Right,
license,
right,
right?
right,
But
right,
so legally, I like to say I'm a designer.
We'll have like the lower thirds come out. There.
But no, like I said, I've done it all. I've done everything that licensed architects do. I work with a lot of licensed architects.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, in my previous job, we hired a lot of them. You know, just because since we worked in so many different states, we worked in all 50 states and a couple of different countries. You know, I did work in Dominican Republic and Germany once. You know, so we would do the design in its entirety, basically, and then hire an architect to help us out with the local, you know, stamping process and getting it permitted and things like that. So, but yeah, but legally, I'd like to say I'm a designer.
Okay.
It works. It fits the bill.
So architectural designer.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I had heard that you were an architectural designer.
Yeah,
And I was just like, oh, I got some ideas. And we started meeting like once a week and just kind of like going off.
Yeah.
And the business was a little bit younger and
That's right.
like, you know, but you had conceptualized some of, you know,
Some of
some
our
things that
thoughts.
you were thinking about, some
Yeah.
things I was thinking about. We haven't acted on those, but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's
We still got those. We
you
still
know,
got
it's still,
those.
yeah. But it really helped me like get excited about the project. You know, like I was
Yeah.
already excited about it, but then like seeing it was just like, oh,
Yes.
this is like one more step closer
Yes.
to it.
Yes.
And so that was super helpful.
Yeah.
And you know, now I'm even thinking about doing something similar because we eventually want to have our own place.
Yep.
You know, as a business.
Yeah.
You know, and just to get the team excited about it.
Yes.
Be like, this is what we're thinking for the future.
This is what we're
5
working
years out.
towards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is what we're working towards.
Exactly.
You
No,
know,
exactly.
having our own space and
You gotta have a BHAG, right? And the big,
Yeah.
hairy, audacious goal,
Yeah.
right? And I think.
Are you reading
renderings-
Scaling Up?
Dude, I've read Scaling Up.
Really?
Oh, dude, I have it noted at my house right now.
That's a great book.
Great book, fantastic book. But you know, you gotta have something to work towards,
Right.
You know, and I think you know, just to your point, visualizing these concepts, you know, something that something that doesn't exist, right? And you're starting to throw these ideas into shape. It really hits home when you can see it, and as realistic as you can. And these computer software has advanced, you know, greatly over the years, you know, to the point where like, you know, it's photorealistic. It's you know, some things could be it could look so real that you wouldn't
Right.
you wouldn't know if it's a photo of the actual existing house or building, or a sketched, you know, artistic rendering.
I mean, I was thinking about that the other day. Like, it's almost like we prefer the renderings over the
The real thing.
the real
The
image.
real thing takes a long time to get.
Yeah.
Rendering takes half the
Well,
time.
it's like they have some photos of the CIC building here,
Yeah.
and I'm like, is this a rendering or is
Mm.
this an actual photo?
Mm.
Like,
Good point.
they look. Yeah, either way, it looks
Oh
great.
well, I mean,
But I feel like what you're talking about is really great for visual people who are very visual who need to see it, and
yeah.
people who are maybe like indecisive.
Yeah,
You know?
I would say, I think it helps the people that are visual, but it also helps people that are not visual.
Hmm.
So in that, I say that because we would do, when we did dentist offices, we would draw in 2D plan, a lot of half walls. And it's funny, when you're looking at a floor plan,
Mm-hmm.
you really can't tell if this is a full wall that went all the way to the ceiling or if this is a half wall that stops at 3 feet or 4 feet, right?
Hmm.
When you're looking at 2D. And the difference is that when you see the separation of space because of that half wall, you start to think, oh man, well, I have this one box and then this one box here. But in reality, if you saw that in 3D, you start to see that because of that half wall, these two small boxes actually feel like a bigger space than what it is, and you really can't tell from a 2D plan. So that's why I always like to incorporate 3D perspectives, even as early as the conceptual phase, which is like my first step
Mm-hmm.
of planning something for somebody. Just because it's a different experience when you can see that, and I started getting more confidence when a lot of my clients have PhDs, went to school for a long time, and so before jumping into that, I would lack confidence, thinking, man, I'm going to talk to somebody who just knows way more than I do. But when in reality, we're just people. There's some people who aren't visual, and there's people that are visual. And I was providing a service that was really, really helpful for these people to understand what they were getting. 'Cause you're going to spend a lot of money building a project, even if it's a small renovation. You're going to spend thousands of dollars, and a lot of headaches. A lot of time is going to pass, to get something built, get this dream built. And so it's worthwhile understanding all the design decisions early up front,
Right.
before you get to that point where, man, it's already halfway built and you want to abort the mission because it doesn't feel the right way.
Right.
you know
Well, there's a Bible verse about that too.
oh, is it?
Yeah. About, before starting a project,
Mm.
kind of calculate the cost before you start building,
Yeah, yeah,
or else you get halfway done and then you realize, hey, I can't complete this.
yeah.
And then, other people come by and
There's value.
mock you.
Yeah, there's value in planning, and
Yeah.
I think the seasoned people know that.
Yeah.
And if I could educate anybody, any newcomer when it comes to like taking on a big project, like spend the time in planning for sure.
Yeah. You had spoke with my dad recently. He actually was talking to him this morning, and he was thinking about like moving forward with some of the, because he's been talking about redoing this kitchen. I mean, it took my dad like 20 years to pick out a boat that he wanted.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. There's
so
so many different boats.
There's so many boats.
So many boats, man.
What boat is right for
Come
me?
on, right? Exactly.
And we had all grown up and moved out, and then like he bought a boat.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's been talking about redesigning this kitchen for a really long time. But he's super busy. He's a small business guy too.
Yeah, yeah.
So doesn't have a lot of time,
Mhm.
and I'm sure it's one of those things that's just kind of always in the back of his head.
Yeah.
And he's just like he's thinking about tearing down the wall between the living room and the kitchen. It's
Yeah.
a small kitchen too.
Sure, sure.
But I'm just like, it makes sense.
Mhm.
Draw out some visuals,
Yeah.
like, what are you thinking? Throw out some ideas.
Yeah.
Plus, you bring your perspective and your, artistic vision to it. It was just like, yeah, you know what? I was thinking this, and
Yeah.
he might, be like, oh wow, I never even thought about that.
Yeah, it's funny. The cool things that start to come to the surface in the planning process is that, like, say he's been wondering on opening that wall up for 20 years or so, right? But we go down the hole of, all right, what if you did? What happens? Because we tend to think that it's all positive, but there are some cons that happen, right? For instance, there could be, if as soon as you open that up, your sink configuration and your countertop configuration is going to change. Hopefully, we want to change it for the better, but there may be some compromises in the process, and so like that's what this planning process is about. Figuring out what the pros are and what the cons are, and if you're happy that, with the pros that you have amongst the cons, then it's usually a good bet to move forward and to think about it further. But more often than not, you're going to see pros of the situation and you're going to see cons. But it's just a matter of figuring that out before you knock the wall down and spend
Right.
thousands of dollars, you know?
Or before you spend 20 years thinking about
Or
it.
spend exactly.
You know,
It usually
so,
helps. It
oh,
usually
it couldn't
helps.
even be done. I don't know why I thought about it.
Exactly.
I'm thinking about other things.
Exactly.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So we gone back. We cleared some ground there. So
Yeah.
architect. That's how we kind of. I would say we were introduced through video,
Yeah.
bonded over architecture.
That's right.
And then flash forward. We're in ministry together.
Yeah.
And topic of conversation as of late has been like stocks.
Oh man.
It's funny because I was never into stocks.
Yeah.
Here and there, I'd
Sure.
give my dad. My dad would
Dabbled a little bit?
Yeah, I'd be like, Netflix seems like a good company.
Yeah, yeah.
And he'd be like, oh no, it's stupid.
I said, no, nobody will
I
watch
think he
that.
bought Netflix, but
Yeah.
yeah. So last year, I was kind of like you. It's just like,
Yeah.
man, I like Tesla. I want to buy Tesla. I want to buy Tesla. 300, 180, 300,
Yeah.
500. Bought it at like 900.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, once I bought one Tesla
Oh,
stock, then
dude.
I was just like
All it
buying
took
all
was
these other
one.
stocks.
All
Yeah.
it took was one, honestly. So I've been watching Tesla for a while now, and I remember when it first hit 300, pre-split. I was looking at it, I was like, man, I don't know anything about investing, but if I were to invest in any company, like it has to be Tesla. They have so much growth ahead of them, and they just hit $300. I got $300. Like, man, I should just put it down. And then like a week would pass by, and like another week would pass by, and then like another month. And so to the point where I kind of like forgot about it. Like my life's moving on without like, I don't have the stock apps on my phone at the time. Like it wasn't really like, it wasn't in my face. And then talking to you again started like resurface a little bit about like, just I would say financial literacy around stocks. And I'm like, man, you're right. There is a lot of action happening again at Tesla. Like there seems to be some growth again. Now I'm starting to do the math, right? The simple math. Man, if I would have just put the $300 in
Right.
a year ago, I would be up 100%, on my money. I'm like, man, that's odd. So it wasn't long after until I'm like, you know what? Let me buy my first share. Let me like get into it. And I remember I bought like one share. I was like, yes, we're gonna be rich.
Yeah. And Robinhood does this like year in reverse kind of thing, or year in like, just kind of gives you an overview of it.
Yeah.
And it tells you like your first purchase, your first stock in it,
nice.
all the different sectors,
Yeah.
how much you've invested, things like
That's
that.
pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they have all like these graphics. That's why I do like Robinhood.
Robinhood looks good, man.
Yeah,
It
with
looks
everything
good.
that they've like done, that hurt.
It hurts. It hurts. I don't know if we're gonna go into it, but it hurts. Let
Yeah.
me tell you, I pulled out.
Did you?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Wow.
Scary, man. Yeah,
It is.
that's your bank account, right?
Right.
Like you got money in here that, it's not spending money, right? It's intended to save and grow,
Right.
And so when a company goes through that kind of scrutiny,
Yeah.
and that kind of shady stuff, you start to think about its track history. What's their fallback plan? What's the plan B? You have my money. What's your plan B? So that I resorted to a more financially backed institution in that
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, I've watched a few interviews with the guy, and he's not very direct with like when he's questioned.
Yeah.
He's not very straightforward.
Yeah.
He seems a little bit like he's not totally honest, and he probably
Yeah.
has things to hide, rightfully so, with everything that went down and how it went down. And he probably can't give the full disclosure of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a little worrisome, like having money in that account and just being like, is it FDIC insured?
Yeah. Did you listen to the Clubhouse interview with Elon Musk and
Yeah, and Elon Musk, man, just kept
he went straight to it. I love it.
yeah,
Again, huge fan of Elon. He's my guy. But I think it still showed that even though he had some pretty good responses to the events that kind of conspired that day with GameStop and AMC, I still feel that like the company's still a new company, still a new business. It's still going through its ranks. It's still going through its things. So naturally, it's going to have some funding issues, some, it needs to still establish its foundation. And, so I think, unfortunately speaking, right, like if it comes to like my assets in that sense, I'm like, man, I would feel safer if it was if it landed on a company that had a bigger foundation, which is like, I'm a small business too, so like it kind of sucks to say that out loud. Uh, but I guess it's a different element because you're dealing with somebody's personal savings, things like
Right.
that. Um,
Yeah, it's I've thought about it in two ways. I'm just like, can they close it down and would my money just be gone?
mm,
What would happen there?
what happens?
They
What
certainly
happens?
didn't step in when I bought GameStop and
See that? Or step in when you try to sell Dodge, right?
yeah, that was brutal. That was
That was
worse.
brutal.
That
That was
was even
brutal.
worse.
So I that's some uncertainty right there. That's
Yeah. But it's like you said, they are a new company,
yeah,
and I feel like, any press is good press,
yeah.
even if it's bad press.
True, true.
And so it's just like a lot of eyes.
Yeah.
They probably got a lot of new subscribers.
They did. Yeah, they did. A lot of new guys.
A lot of
Our,
new,
our generation is just jumping on Robinhood.
yeah.
You know.
And Cash App too. I'm not sure
Yeah.
like a lot of people know this, but like Cash App has an amazing trading platform.
Saw that. Yeah.
Like super innovative. It's just so easy to use.
Yeah.
And like the tools that they give you, like you can sort by sector, you can sort by percentage of growth over the past 3,
Yeah,
6, 1
So you
year.
could just move in and join the wave when that
Yeah.
happens.
It's
Could you buy like fractional shares?
you can buy fractional, you can buy
See,
Bitcoin.
I think that's the biggest thing that's nice because I have my stocks. They're with Chase, and you have to buy whole shares at that point. But these guys, I would imagine other people that are at Chase, they're buying hundreds of shares at a shop. So they're
Right.
not really looking at fractional shares. So I think there's definitely an element of there's a great opportunity there as a product for Cash App, Webull, Robinhood, for these younger, smaller retail investors to buy these fractional shares because they're much less of a budget here or there. But that comes with like, I feel like that doesn't come for free. It is a sexy platform in that sense, and it's funny because I have this discussion with a couple of my buddies, and I'm kind of on the pull out of Robinhood, I would say season right now. But when I pitch any other company, I also say, well, it doesn't look as good as Robinhood.
Yeah.
You know?
No, it's a real thing because it has
is.
to be. And I say this like across the board too, like with in the company, like if it's not easy to use, people aren't going to use it.
Yeah, it's
You
true.
know?
It's true.
And it's like our project manager was just looking at some new project management software, and it's like, I wish he had mentioned it.
Yeah.
Because it's like I've been down the road,
Oh my gosh.
and it's just like
such a good point.
we actually pulled out of project management software.
Yeah, because it wasn't easy to use.
The one that we settled on, Choir,
Yeah.
I rave by it.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's a glorified checklist.
Sure.
And so
Well, they all are, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
essentially,
They
yeah.
all are.
And so we had our production sheet, which like lists all our weddings, and then all the steps that need to be done, like
Yeah.
rolling across the columns.
Gotcha.
So it's a great way. I mean, you could literally zoom out of that sheet and look at an entire year.
Yeah.
And because once I figured out conditional formatting, where it's just like a cell is red
Yeah.
until you check it off,
Yeah.
like I could zoom out and see this big red square.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I was just like, wow, okay, this is everything we're going to be done. It's got
Gotcha.
to get done. And then
Gotcha.
as it turns green, it's like, okay, we're completing
We're
our
good.
work,
That's a good point.
where you can't really, maybe you can, but from
Yeah.
my experience, I couldn't do that with the project management software. I could like zoom into projects, but it would be on a project to project basis.
So yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's funny. The element that I was looking for, and it's funny, it has to be easy to use, but it has to also give you all the data that you're looking for. And the one data that I was looking for on top of that was to track my time, right? Because a lot of our processes, much like yours, was very repetitive, right? One wedding may have similar recipes to another wedding, right? So
Right.
that means that you're gonna have you're gonna have a ceremony, right? Then you're gonna have a cocktail hour and things like that. So in that same essence, when it comes to designing, we found that there was a lot of repetition in some of the things that we were doing. And in that repetition, I was looking to see how long did it take us to do that. If I'm going to hire one person to do that one role, is it going to take them an hour every time to do that? Is it going to fluctuate? Why is it fluctuating? Obviously there's other factors, but if you could hone in to see like what's the wasted time, if the data started to shoot out at you, to tell you, hey, there's a lot of waste here, then you can start to pinpoint on like processes around that. But it's funny when it comes to ease of use, just to go back on that topic, we had to figure out where the button was located on the desktop to start and stop your timer, when we were to design. And like if that wasn't easy to access, then it wasn't going to be used at all. So there was a lot of software that we like just couldn't do, because then every time you want to stop a timer, you'd have to go back into the main menu, search the client up, go through that process, open it up, and then stop the timer. Like,
Yeah.
that's not going to work. Not going to work.
Yeah, it's like it not only does it have to be like easy to use, like it has to be like fun, and
It can't look like Windows 98.
yeah,
Yeah, I
like
gotcha.
I'm a huge fan of like metrics and data. Like I want to see, I wanna
UI.
yeah.
Yeah. Is it user interface?
And so I mean I think our main goal is to like design our own platform that
Good goal.
has all the metrics
Oh, yeah.
that we want, all
good.
the data output that we like to see.
Yeah.
Time tracking would be nice. That's not something we use,
Sure.
but I think that's something that we're gonna start exploring. I think it's time.
It's a good KPI.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's a good metric.
Um,
But you are doing a lot of weddings.
oh yeah,
You guys are big.
yeah, yeah. We're at like 2 something right now.
Yeah. So I
So-
mean, I would imagine at that point, you guys are gonna have those scaling challenges. Like how do we scale up? Where do we need to scale up? In what areas? What areas do we need to probably do a little better at? And what areas are totally fine for it to coast just like that?
Right.
And it's kind of it's the data that you pull out of those events that I think will start to speak to you a lot, which is why the program is so important. And so I agree. Like I think ultimately a lot of companies would have to make their own special program just for them, for them to actually like tap into it, because everybody's unique in their own way.
Right.
But it's so funny. Yeah, it's 2021, and you start to be surprised. We're like, oh man, does this not exist already? Somebody not do this already? Should I start another business? Right?
Well, it's crazy to think about like how many CRMs, for instance, like are out there. I mean,
Yeah.
you have CRMs like literally dedicated just to weddings.
Yeah.
And we explored those too, but it's like they don't hit it the way like be like, oh man, it'd be nice if I had this.
Oh yeah.
You know?
All the time, every time. Yeah.
So yeah, we're like exploring like having our own platform, and
Yeah.
maybe we'd like monetize it in the future. But
Yeah.
we're doing
It's-
so many things. As it
Be
is.
smart. Be
We
smart.
just started this podcast.
One thing at a time, I guess. Right?
yeah.
One thing at a time.
Do you have a question like the return on things? Like, so for instance, right, we're launching this podcast,
Always.
right?
Yeah.
There could be some kind of return, and there's an intangible. Like, just I'm enjoying it.
Oh man, I'm laughing because I'm always thinking of ROI.
Yeah.
And it's funny, my family, my wife and my cousins, they know that about me. And I'm a big ROI guy, even down to like my clothing. I'm not a flashy person at all.
Except for the Camo Red.
Except for the camera red
VW.
cars. I mean, I like cars, but like when it comes to shoes, things like that, like it hurts to spend a lot of money, just because I'm like, man, I'd rather invest it, or I'd rather spend that on a cool tripod, that I've been needing or something like that. So there's certain things that I'm like, oh, you know what? That's a nice shoe. I'm gonna buy that shoe. It feels comfortable. It has to be functional first, and then form. But then there's shoes like the ones that I have on now that I'm like gloating about because I bought it at Target and it looks really cool. And I spent $18. I'm like, dude, I'm getting my ROI like immediately. Every step I take, I'm getting ROI. It's funny. So I'm a big ROI guy, honestly.
Yeah, it's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little bit the same way. Like clothes, I'm not like huge into. I've tried to be like more fashionable this year.
I know.
There's a lot of people at church that are very fashionable.
Oh,
and it's like
dude, they're
they
so
look
good.
great. I'm
They're
like,
so
man,
good.
I want to be cool like that.
I
Like,
know. I'm same, man.
Josie has like such a good, like
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
like just shop for me.
Yeah. No, I got you.
'Cause I don't really like shopping.
It's funny. There is a service like that in California where
People just shop for
people, like successful people that just aren't good at fashion. Right?
Yeah.
Like maybe like you and I will probably be like
I
that
like
hire
the-
people that shop for them.
you.
That's
Yeah,
the thing.
I mean, I'm like I like it. I'm just like, man, that's
I like the idea of it,
Yeah.
but don't show me the number.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. My wife does a lot of shopping for me, honestly, which is
Yeah.
actually very helpful. I know you're single, but I'm gonna tell you, having a wife that enjoys shopping, who shops for you, it's nice.
Yep.
But because the clothes appear, and they're good selections. Let me tell you. And then you don't know what it costs, which is fantastic.
People give me a hard time about like they're like, you eat out a lot.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I sometimes have someone clean my apartment.
yeah, yeah.
I send my clothes out to be washed.
Oh man, do you get it folded back too?
Yeah.
Oh, dude,
Fluff
yeah,
and
I did
fold.
the same thing, man. I did the same thing, man.
Yeah.
Before I moved in with my wife. Yeah,
Yeah.
man. Folded is fantastic.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. Now I just need someone
Underrated,
to like take it
underrated.
from the laundromat
Yeah, yeah, and
to
put it
my
right in your
apartment. But
Yeah,
you know, well, like when I shop, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
figured like, okay, that's an hour and a half shopping,
yeah,
and then I'm gonna put it in the fridge, and then every time I make a meal, it's like a half hour.
yeah, yeah.
And then a lot of times I'm not home, so the food goes bad.
Oh yeah, man.
I'm like, it costs me. I'm losing money
Yeah,
in
that's a
this
good point.
exchange.
Good point.
The 2 hours it takes me to do my laundry,
Yeah.
like my time is better off spent doing something else.
Yeah.
Same thing cleaning my apartment. So I just like
Yeah, yeah.
anything I don't like doing, I'm just like,
And
this
that's-
isn't worth my time.
Honestly, hold on. That's a good lesson that you're going through
Yeah.
right now because you're already delegating, like in your personal life. But quick question before we go too far.
Sure.
Do you eat leftovers?
No, I don't.
You don't.
I
See,
don't like
ROI
leftovers.
out the window right there,
I
man.
don't like. There's something about like
Yeah, yeah.
restaurant food. Like, as soon as unless it's pizza.
Have you ate at Los Andes, man?
Los Andes, I will
Beautiful.
leftovers. Yes,
Leftovers for
absolutely.
days.
For 3 days, I'm eating steak
Yeah, yeah.
with like soggy onions on it. But
Yeah, man.
Los
ROI, man. ROI. I say that because I think if you're constantly eating out and then maybe not finishing the whole meal, I'm somebody who like I gotta finish the plate. My wife will like leave one bite, but I'm like I gotta finish the plate like because I paid for it, or maybe not so much that I paid for it, but it's in front of my face. Like
yeah,
it's probably a problem.
what
it really is.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it. What is the one book? Because I do that too.
Yeah.
Like there's this like I leave like one like it's almost like no, I don't want to finish everything on my plate.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like I leave like one bite.
So you do that.
Yeah.
See, I don't know that feeling. I don't. I really don't. I mean, I take as much as I'm gonna eat. I'm not like
Yeah.
filling for days. And if I did, or like if it's Chinese food, like they always overfill. Like you never finish a plate of Chinese food. But I mean, so like I said, I think in short, I like to know that like I got this thing and I've depleted it 100%. Therefore, there's no waste. If that makes sense, because I think that carries along with a lot of things that I do, a lot of things that I have. ROI on cars right now. Like I was a car guy, and
Yeah.
now I bought a beater truck, 2003. It's 2021. It's funny. My kids get in my car and they're like, "Oh,
The black truck?
the black truck, yeah." So 2003, and so no car payment, right? Insurance is dirt cheap, right? And all the money that I'm saving there going somewhere else, going to investments, right? And so it's funny. My kids get in the car and they're like, "Oh, play Jimi Hendrix." I'm like, "Oh, I can't because my phone doesn't connect to the radio." It's funny because they're 2 and 3 years old, right?
Yeah.
But I gotta restate that every single time. It's
Yeah.
the funniest thing. But like again, I'm getting a return. Right now, I'm in a season where that return is gonna yield me greater results in the future.
Right.
So I think it's important. ROI is important, man.
I'm very much the same way. Like, and this segued into yesterday. I went to Tesla to test drive because I'm thinking, excuse me, I've had a Toyota Prius now. Got it at just under 100,000. I got 260,000.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Had it for 4 years. Used to get like 60 miles to the gallon. Gets like 40 miles to the gallon, which is
Yeah.
still pretty good.
Pretty good.
Better than most cars.
Pretty good.
Great running car.
Yeah, yeah,
Like I
Prius.
just replaced the struts on it. The struts, not because they needed to be replaced, but like
Yeah.
they were making a little bit of noise.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I thought it was like a tire thing. I was like, I better get this checked out. So,
Mm-hmm.
all that to say, it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, I've had the car a while, no car payment.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, I feel like I should get a new car,
Sure.
but it's just like I'm not really a car person.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you're a car person.
Yeah,
Couple
yeah.
cars like catch my eye. Like
Yeah.
I like the new Bronco.
Bronco. That was appealing.
Yeah,
That
I like
marketing.
the Range Rover. I like the
Mm.
old Land Cruisers,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which I wouldn't get that.
Sure.
It's not
It doesn't
practical.
have
There's
Bluetooth.
no Bluetooth.
No Bluetooth. Yeah.
Um, I like the G wagon.
Yeah, yeah. I can see in a G wagon. You're
Right?
tall. Yeah, yeah.
I like. I thought I liked the Tesla.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. Okay,
Thought
let's
I
get
liked the
into this.
Tesla.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
get into it. Wait, which one did you drive?
So I've rented a Model 3, driven that. Just went and test drove the Y.
Okay.
I wanted to test drive the X,
Yeah.
but they didn't have any,
Okay.
so I had to drive the Y.
So just for clarification, you drove the two lower end models.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to state that.
Yeah. Which it has some cool features that I really
yeah.
like. A wireless charging, you just put your phone down. It's two in the center console.
I got my reservations on that, but that's pretty cool.
I liked it better than the previous when we rented them. It
Yeah.
had like, the bottom of your iPhone has the Thunderbolt,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
got to like plug it into the Thunderbolt.
Okay. Interesting.
And it was like very like this could
that
break
sounds
off.
like it'll break off
Yeah.
soon.
Um,
Which is an Apple issue, right? Because they didn't have wireless charging at the time, probably, right?
I think that might
Maybe
have
not.
been it.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Um,
So it was the driving element that you didn't like, or
it's just
it's different. It's definitely different. But you're also used to an electric car, so I'm interested to see
yeah.
what your
So
thoughts there.
there's just nothing like super impressive about it.
Yeah. Okay.
know?
Yeah.
Um,
It's very simplistic.
very simplistic. Nothing really going on.
Yeah.
I was already like, when you get something and you're excited about it for
Yeah.
like a week, and then eventually it loses its
True.
flair.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like test driving it, and I was just like, yeah, I'm over this car.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
It was kind of sad
That happened
because
fast.
yeah.
Did you put it in autopilot?
We did the cruise control autopilot. We didn't do the
Yeah.
back roads autopilot.
Gotcha.
Um,
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Like heated steering wheel, I liked.
Yeah.
Heated seats, like
But you can find that in other cars.
decently comfortable.
Yeah.
Very plain though on the inside, which I like and I don't like.
Yeah. 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 There is a sense of like, if this is a toy, I want to press the buttons, and
Yeah.
I'm out of buttons already.
Which I think the X is like, I think it's like 140, 50,000. It's just like, if
Yeah.
you're going to spend that much on a car, like,
Yeah. It better have more buttons.
yeah.
All right. No, I see what you're saying. I do see what you're saying. I think there's pros on one side of that spectrum, where they lack on the other side of that spectrum, and it's true. And I think they're going bold in one direction, which is true. It may appeal to some and not everybody. That's a good point.
I love it for the ROI when he starts doing like the Uber.
The robo-taxi.
Yes.
Man.
It's just like, man, I would much rather do that than own apartments or something like that.
Let's just say that Tesla share right there, that's $1 trillion market cap right there, man. When that
Yeah.
happens.
That's like the sole reason I would buy a Tesla at this
Yeah.
point. I feel like to other people,
Yeah.
Tesla has like a lot of like, fanfare around it. It's
Yeah,
just like,
yeah.
oh, you got a Tesla, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not, like I said, I'm not too big into cars. I'm not too big into clothes.
Yeah.
So it's like, what do I spend my money on?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I
hear
feel like
you.
it's the simple things, like coffee in the morning, good meal, like
I just want to note that Sean prefers his coffee with no cap. No top.
that's true. No top.
Throw that out there.
The top is faulty.
No top. You want to know that top isn't there. I got you.
Yeah. You can't have the top.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I feel like, you are entitled to spend your money however you please, right? And I think the society has it like, oh, you must buy this and look like that and like have this and feel that, and I think that's the good thing about like, living in America in that sense, and being being your own person. You could spend that on traveling. You could travel a little bit more. I think you've done a little bit of traveling.
I'm
too.
traveling. I'm not like, I feel like that's another thing that's like overly hyped.
Sure.
And like our culture is just like, you gotta travel. And then you travel, and I was just like, I want to go home.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point.
I want to go home.
Well, so all right. So then let me ask you this question.
I didn't really have money
wh-
to be traveling, so this could have been why.
What are you interested in either investing in or spending your money into? Like, is it like that? Is it like I'd rather spend or invest, or are you just on this, I'd rather invest it all?
So, I do like investing. I like investing more. Like people have talked to me about real estate for a long time. I don't like the idea of holding things I don't value.
Define value.
So, if a property came along
Yeah.
and I felt like, the person who's going to rent this
Mm-hmm.
is going to love it.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Then that has value to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we had that
We
conversation when
did. Yeah.
talking about building,
Yeah.
where if it like adds value to the community, like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm not a big fan of like, you know, wouldn't want to just like flip a house,
Yeah.
make it look somewhat pretty, but
Yeah.
underneath it, it's just like,
Oh
this
man.
isn't,
Oh, you're striking a chord right now, man.
yeah.
Oh, I'm with you on that.
Where it's just like, even though someone else is going to live in it,
Mm-hmm.
like I want it to be what, how I'd want it to be if
Oh,
I
dude.
were the one
I think
to live in it, you know?
this kind of dips into a little bit of our conversations that we've had over the years. But yeah, man, that's one of my biggest gripes against a lot of current day or modern day developers, where I feel like they'll flip a house,
Mm-hmm.
they'll put in granite countertops, and sell it to the next person. And the unfortunate thing is that like, I think I think the wide consumer, I would say like their basis on like oh, what's acceptable, at least in our area, is like, man, if it has granite countertops, it's so much better than what's out
Right.
there. And I'm like, no, wait a minute, there's so much more to think through and having a house that you would rather live in. And so I agree with that. It's like, man, if you don't want to live, if you wouldn't live in it yourself
Right.
and enjoy it, like, why even get into it and do that for somebody else, so I'm with you 100% on that. And I think that's why we talk and vibe a lot.
Yeah, and I think our original concept too was like, how do you bring that type of modern living where it's just like, man, this house is amazing. Some form of simplicity
Yeah.
and like innovation, and make it affordable and accessible to, you know, everyday people.
Yeah.
I'm also a big fan of like making a profit.
Yeah, yeah. I
You
mean,
know?
so I think that's the double-edged sword, right?
Right.
And so like developers, they're in it for the profit, and most developers, unfortunately, I think a lot of people are see an opportunity, and so I'm coming from the perspective of it being a designer, so I value, having a unique element to each household, a unique living experience, that would, is private, safe, you can entertain people in, comfortable in it. And I believe every household should have that. But if you're looking at it through a developer's perspective, right, not design, then you're going to see design, the blueprints of a house as a cost item. You're gonna, as the same as you're going to see like lumber and windows and doors. So what you see more likely than not, and this is the society that we live in, is that a developer will own two, maybe three floor plans, like 2, 3 sets of blueprints, and they'll just build this same cookie cutter house all over the city, change out the color themes, change out the parking scenario maybe, and just swap out the siding and the outside, and then just cookie cutter, cookie cutter, cookie cutter.
Right.
And what that happens is that they're pulling out all the profits. But like, it's funny when you start to dissect that, it's like you really, if you were to just take a little bit of a less profit and design this in a way that was a little better or a little bit more thoughtful, maybe use the same materials, maybe use the same granite countertops, right? But just that little aspect in the planning phase, which kind of goes back to our original discussion, would make it so that this one property was unique. Now the value of that person's, life, or that person's gonna live in it day in and day out, right? And so they're gonna have to walk by the same window that's staring into somebody else's window.
Right.
And I don't know if you live in that situation now, but I did. I lived in the second floor where like I looked out my window and I could see somebody else's bedroom right there. Therefore, my blinds stayed closed. So like I would like to just enjoy opening my window. So I think if you respect it on that element, and you're able and you allow yourself to take less profits, I think what you leave as a legacy, right, which is a house that would be standing for the next 100 years, right, would be a house that people, future generations could love.
Yeah, and I feel like that's exponential value.
Yeah.
And how like these small decisions that we make, compound like into the future.
Yes,
That
yes.
person who's going to be living it every day, the little bit more value that they get out of their day-to-day environment,
Yep.
Exponentially compounds.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I'm also a huge like advocate that like environment is super important.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why we're in the building that we're in, because I just I feel like there's so much like intangible
Oh,
value
connection. Yeah,
in a space like this.
yeah. I
Um,
agree with that.
And circling back to like the car, you made a point like, you don't have to buy anything that, you don't want to buy. There's a lot of like pressure and that kind of thing. The only aspect that I feel, and maybe there's one or two, but like the one is just like, you know, having a successful business, presenting myself in a certain way for like clients, but or potential clients.
Yes,
That's probably the one aspect. It's just like, oh,
I
he
agree with
just
that.
rolled up in like, an
Yeah,
Audi or whatever. It's just like they're probably doing pretty well,
yeah,
and I can trust this guy. Like other people have obviously trusted him,
yeah. I agree
rather
with that.
than this guy pulling up in a Prius
Yeah.
that's dented on the bumper, on the
Yes.
side,
Yeah.
and the steering wheel,
In
like
fact,
grip is falling off.
actually, I hit the bumper on the way in.
It's literally like a
Yeah, yeah.
license plate number from where someone rear-ended me.
That's
You
too
know.
funny. I agree. I think I see cars as also as an extension of your fashion, in a sense. And so if you're pulling up,
It's an accessory. It's just a
it's an
very
accessory.
expensive
It
accessory.
is. It is. And I totally agree with you. And I met other people. I met actually the other day. I met a contractor. Good guy. We rolled up to a job site together at the same time. I'd say. I'm in my truck that's 20 years old, and he pulled up in a Camry that's let's say 8 years old. And after I got to know him a little bit, I learned that he actually does own a Lamborghini and a bunch of jet skis and a boat and this that. Like he has all these toys that he wouldn't drive to a job site, because he understands that like I'm not gonna wear this element to show that I'm this person when I'm providing a service under this character in that sense. There's different hats for different days, right? You wouldn't wear a rain jacket on a day that's super sunny, right?
Right.
So I think it's an extension, that you can look at it like a fashion statement. But I agree that like, if you're looking at it from a professional standpoint, there's corporate companies that, offer incentives for their employees to drive a nicer car when they meet clients, just because again, there is an element to, you don't want to be in a beater that might break down when you're on the way to lunch.
Well, I've thought about that with my own employees. Like, I think at this point they all drive nicer cars than I do. But like, there was a time where, you know, um, what one guy in particular was just like, maybe I should get him a company car because what if it broke down on the way to the wedding?
Yeah.
You know, so I feel like there's
Yeah.
something there as
There's
well.
something there. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, there's definitely something there. There's pros and cons. Not every industry requires a nice car to roll up to work in.
Yeah. Um, but I think where I find my value, where I like to put my money, is not so much into things, but like things that like create value for others.
Yeah.
And I've done that like with photography. The CRM I think is an extension of that, like something
Yeah.
that it makes my life easier would make the team's life more
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah.
And that could eventually probably be like monetized and make other people's lives easier.
Agreed.
Like make the client experience probably better on the back
Oh,
end.
oh yeah, if you could roll them into that
They have an
experience.
app,
Like Domino's. I always think about Domino's.
Oh, I love that.
When they tell
The
you that
tracker?
when it's in the oven,
I love it.
love it. I totally appreciate that process.
Absolutely love it. Yeah. So, things that add more value, and I guess a little off topic. Like I see someone like Elon Musk, running all the companies that he's running.
Yeah.
You know, um, and then like the frustration of like we're spending like 2 weeks trying to pick a project management software.
Oh my gosh, good point. Good
You
point.
know, or
Yeah.
like we had a hard time like launching a website,
Yeah.
and they're like putting a person on another planet.
Yeah, yeah. Have you read into some of his processes?
No.
What he does is he first off his office is a cubicle like right on the floor of the engineers. Like it's right in the middle. It's easy to find. It's right off the main hallway. Like it's not hard to get to. And he makes it so that he created a culture where you don't like, especially in big corporate companies. And I'm not sure if you experienced this in your life, but usually in big corporate structures, if you wanted to talk to somebody in a different department, you'd have to go through like your boss, who will then talk to somebody on their equal like level of hierarchy, which would then transfer it down back to that person, who would transfer it back up and then come back down. You can never go directly to that person without stepping on somebody's toes, right? But Elon Musk kind of just he took down all those barriers, so that like somebody in this department who was like who was in charge of like creating this user interface would talk directly with the person who had to use it back in the manufacturing ground, and they would email directly. They would correspond like immediately. So decisions were happening a lot faster because he empowered that process. So I think there's a lot of delegation techniques that
Mm-hmm.
Elon Musk just like, you know, innovated in by itself, in order to get to where he is, because he's delegated a lot. I mean, that's not to say that he, doesn't commit a lot of his time to make it happen, because, we could talk business, but then we could easily talk into family side, right?
Right.
Failed marriages, right? His family's, it probably hurts a lot from not
Mm-hmm.
having his dad around, their dad around. So there's a lot of pros and cons when it comes to like dissecting the world of Elon Musk.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the business by itself, he's gone through a lot of barriers in order to get things done fast.
I think too, where like if I were to go and start another company, or if I were to go consult another company that's similar to mine, or maybe even different, and they were addressing their pain points to me, I could probably say, I've been through that, and I probably have a solution to make their lives easier
Yeah,
versus having to figure it out. So it's just like a
yeah,
person only has so much bandwidth; they can only solve so many
yes,
problems.
so true.
So having someone else who's spent 2 years somewhere
Yep.
else and came up with the solution
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
this one problem, and they become the solution to the next place that they're at.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head too. It's like I don't think you're ever going to come up with all the answers. I don't think you have the capacity to solve every single problem, right? Which you'll step into like the world that I was in, right? But like, you're going to have to empower other people to, have that responsibility to make those changes, and they're changes, they're decisions that for the company. And as long as that there's like a respect barrier, I'm sure there's like he has, he always mentions his the designer, the Cybertruck Franz.
Mm-hmm.
He always I know he gives him a lot of credit for that. But I think it's kind of it maybe escapes a lot of people's minds, because Elon is going to be the last person that you know decides on a design like the Cybertruck. But there's a lot of iterations and innovation that happens by Franz, the guy that's directly under him, that's leading that technology in that sense, So I think there's a lot of people like Franz who work under Elon, that Elon has empowered to just take full control of an element, and Elon steps in with those high level hard decisions and the goal and the direction that they're going into, and then steps back to let them do their thing, let them operate, let them prototype, gives them the resources to just evolve and scale. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Did he also come up with like the other models as well?
That's a good question. I don't know exactly Franz's history. I think he had a part in that. I do know like the original test, like as far as the Model S is concerned, it was like Henrik Fisker, things like that.
Mm.
Those other guys involved, and sure. But at the moment, at least Franz, I know that he's in charge of Cybertruck, which is pretty cool. By the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I got my order in for
I
that.
got my order in too.
So
I don't know if I'm
it's
gonna do
supposed to be this year, right?
it. Late 2021. It's funny. I ordered it because the deposit is $100,
Right.
right? Refundable deposit, right?
Wow.
Which I feel like there may be a lot of people that pull out of that, right? There's just the orders are so crazy, and it's funny. I'm over here like, if the numbers don't look right by the time this becomes available, I'm gonna pull out as well, because again, ROI, right? You don't want to buy a depreciating asset if it doesn't make sense, So yeah,
Yeah. It's a cool car. It's definitely a cool car. I do like how the Model 3 looks too. I never liked the X until I saw like an Instagram post and like the doors were open.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just like, it's
Yeah.
kind of a cool car.
yeah, that's a cool car. That's a
And
cool
yeah,
car.
I'm not really a car person.
I got you.
But then once I
I'll have to send
started
you, I'll have
like,
to send you some pictures.
it's like stocks. Like once I started like thinking about cars, it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like, I kind of like the Audi and I
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like the Mercedes. And
That's
I
a good
kinda,
point. I think Tesla's the leader in EV right now, and I think once the wave actually comes into play, which is just a testament of like how all these stocks are just on sale right now. But I think when that wave actually happens, I think people will find that like what, they're probably going to look elsewhere, for a higher quality car. Like Audi makes a great car, Mercedes makes a great like quality like interior, quality like ride experience. So I think once it gets kind of stagnant on the robo taxis, think about it, everybody's going to experience a Tesla one day. They're going to be like, okay, well, Could we have something a little bit more high quality and finishes and like now we're just picking out of like the best EVs at that point. So we're still on the run up, but it will plateau, I think, at one point, at some point.
Well, yeah, I imagine we're going in like the direction of all fully autonomous driving, whether that's like, I'm guessing like 25 years.
Not even
No?
left and right.
Full autonomy?
Well, so you got people like Massachusetts, right, that decided in the year 2035, I believe, that they would ban sales of gas vehicles, right? States are coming out left and right. Countries are saying that. You got dealerships like Jaguar just announced that by 2025 they're gonna make 100% EVs. So like there's this massive transition to EV cars, and so the only logical step that comes after that is automation of driving, just because these cars will hold that technology. And so once that happens, I think once we start to realize that, like, once the statistic shows that less car accidents are happening, it's gonna be as fast as like the shares shot up.
Yeah.
Like that's how fast people are gonna adopt automation. Like,
Yeah. But I also wonder too, like, electric doesn't equate autonomy.
it doesn't.
Because we
You could do that in
could
gas.
have been done, doing
Yeah,
that with gas.
that's a good point.
It's just like they seem to be like, I don't know, paired.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. It's a good point. It is paired in some sense. I think you're gonna if you have to think that far into technology for it to control your vehicle. I mean, I think you just start to add a little bit more unnecessary moving parts when you think about the gas or combustion engine. So I wonder. It's a good point. It's a good play. I mean, there's a lot of advanced technology even for gas cars, but it's a good point. I wonder what happens in the world of automation. In fact, I know we go on tangents, but I'm predicting that the world of electrical, like the electrical field, like as far as like home electricians, I think there's going to be a wave of people updating their electrical services and their households, just to anticipate charging electric cars. I think there's going to be a huge wave of that.
Yeah, because I mean, the guy was saying too, like to charge your car just out of the socket at your house is like 3 to 4 days.
Takes a long time.
Takes a long
Takes
time.
a long time.
It's like
You're gonna need a 240 volt, a supercharger at your house.
And I remember we were in San Diego. We rented a car and a Tesla, and each morning we had to go to the supercharger, and we just sat there for like 40 minutes. And it wasn't great. It was a short range test. It was like 200 miles, 230 miles.
Yeah.
When we test rode it too, it's like we didn't go very far. It was at like 147 miles that was left on the battery, and when we got back, it was like 121. And I was like,
Oh, okay.
no way we drove that many miles.
Wow. Wow.
So it like it's like
Range
kind of
is-
like it's kind of like your phone battery.
Yeah.
You're just like.
Year 2 on your phone.
Yeah, it's like
it's
what?
rough.
Yeah, it's like, wow, I just took this off the charger and I'm like at 80%.
Oh man.
So
I'm sure a
it's-
lot of people listening to this are like agreeing with you right now,
Yeah,
or probably buying a new phone right now.
or selling the Tesla.
s-
But yeah, I mean, maybe we should wrap it up. But I
Yeah,
do want to ask you, someone who is an entrepreneur, hitting the scene, kind of had gone into entrepreneurship and then out of it, back in it,
Yeah.
and then kind of forced back into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any what's the
Any
journey
thoughts?
like? Any
Oh,
any
man,
thoughts?
I am
Words of
loving
wisdom?
It. I
Yeah.
am loving it. I am so happy that it happened in the way it did. I'm very. I feel like I'm in this season of life, and I should be here. So I'm very grateful that we left in those terms. I'm very grateful. It's funny. 2020 was a weird year. COVID-19 was tricky, but I had the support of unemployment to help me, and just kind of a severance pay and all that stuff to help me kind of give me months, right? Return investment, right? I saw that as days that it allotted me, right? So I'm like, okay, well, it gave me X amount of months to figure this out.
Yeah.
And so that was a huge, confidence booster. So, I think especially, we're seeing a lot more people stepping out into that element right now, that it's the beginning of 2021 right now. But I would say I'm so happy I did it, but I see the mistakes that I've done in the past and all the learnings that I've had in the past. That 2 years of going back into corporate taught me how to scale and how to run a department. Those are all traits that are going to come in the very near future. I'm already thinking in that manner. I'm like, okay, well, if I was going to hire somebody, who would it be? You know, how am I going to scale? What help do I need? And I learned what I was good at in that era, what I was not good at, because we all have positive and negative traits. And what you want to do is you want to hire the people that do the things that you don't do,
Right.
do the things that you suck at. And so I came out of that experience with such a learning, just kind of a boost in education, that I'm tackling this hard, 150% every day. I wake up 6 a.m. By the way, this started 2 weeks ago. 6
Yeah.
a.m.
Okay.
Right.
I like that.
And get ready to work. Whether it's at Buckland, doing some work, doing some labor work, because that's a bootstrap as well, or in my office, getting some reading done or working on a project that I got to do or a presentation. And I work 9 to 5, break, hang out with the kids, put the kids to bed. It may hop back on at 9 o'clock at night. And so it's funny. There's a lot of hours as an entrepreneur, but they're fun hours. They're fantastic hours. They're hours that are just like, man, every time I put another hour into this seat, I get more reward. More people know about my business or about my services. The brand kind of continues. More people are inquiring about my services, which puts me in a position to scale up. So it's definitely an adrenaline, I think. As an entrepreneur, I think you would agree. It's kind of a competitive thing as well, too. You like to see your numbers go.
Yeah. Like your efforts are always directly tied to the results.
Yeah.
If you're putting in the time and, I think you got to be good.
Yeah.
Like at what you do.
Disciplined.
Yeah. But yeah, there's like that direct result.
There really is, and I like to see that it's benefiting my family, right? And I'm no longer exchanging my hours, right? I don't know if you ever seen that I think it's called the cash quadrant, but there's different buckets, and when you're an employee, you're exchanging your time for your wage, but when you're a business owner, it's kind of a different element there, and so I like feeling that I'm building a foundation, of assets that is going to grow and put me in a position to scale up larger opportunities, but ultimately to help, it's going to ultimately help people in another way, and I'll be able to help more people at the same time, so I like it.
Yeah.
I like the process.
Well, Jerry, thank you so much for coming on the early first season of the podcast.
Appreciate
it's
it, man.
great to have you.
Oh, I had a blast, honestly. Like, this is a great volley.
Yeah.
It had us really moving, man. This is good. I think this is
Yeah.
exciting stuff you got going on here.
It's good to talk things out and kind of learn from.
If it could help anybody else out that's going through the same steps, honestly, I know I would have appreciated it.
Yeah.
Going through that process,
I think too, even volleying back and forth with PM software.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
that's
just to kind of be relatable. I'm sure there's a lot more people that are going through the same same steps that we've gone through. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you
Thank you, man.
for coming on.
Appreciate
And we were discussing earlier, like how do you end a podcast?
Yeah.
It's not really.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well,
It's not a good way.
Would you open up the question to the audience? Like, would they any suggestions?
Any suggestions? Yeah. Leave them in the comments below. How do you end a podcast?
That's right.
You can check out Jerry's work.
Yes.
You want to maybe just plug the website, email?
JerichoDesign.com. Yeah,
Awesome.
check me out. So same deal on social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook.
So it's at Jericho.
At Jericho Design.
At Jericho Design.
Yeah.
There you have it. Yeah, check out his work, and we look forward to having you on the
Thank you, man.
next season there.
Appreciate it, man.
Awesome.